Hey, this is Dr. D coming back at you. Today I'm going to be warning you about the lower vibrational emotional plane, some aspects of it, and what to expect. This is partly about the evolution of narcissistic mindset and behavior. So take a moment to click on that like button and let me know you are enjoying my content, and subscribe if you want the insight. Let's get right to it. Now, as a psychic, I see everyone has a demon. The traumas that you have endured may have made it with your demon, and some of them have split. Now, the reason why I say this is because the demon is somewhat what tells me what's going on when people come to me for a reading. And demonic archetypes are sometimes passive or aggressive. This is why they are triggered within us due to certain environmental situations. And a narcissist has an ego and demons that are very passive aggressive on purpose. And in another video, I'll introduce you to demonic archetypes. But they only consist on the levels of sex and life instincts, okay? So what's happening, there's an aspect of the lower vibrational emotional plane. Our ancestors knew this, and this is why they went about building the pyramids. We have a cycle: summer, winter, spring, and fall in consciousness. In the winter of consciousness, on this plane of existence, the emotional plane of existence, a lot of negative emotion tends to build up, okay? So let's talk about that, and let's talk about how that contributes to narcissistic behaviors and tendencies, because everyone in the Black community, every man is not a narcissist, okay? So we're going to talk about that a little bit, but one of the things I want to ask is, why are we quote unquote so good at keeping it 100 but can't facilitate intimacy in relationships? This is one of the fakest attempts of the narc to orchestrate this reality for you in the form of love bombing, okay? And the facade of intimacy created in the love bombing stage feeds on the need to have someone who understands you on an emotional level. This is a need that most codependents share, okay? This is very important if you grew up in a home without a father, because you don't understand any type of malevolent force, and many times you don't expect a wolf in sheep's clothing. The toxicity and manipulation of the male force is also picked up many times by our male counterpart. He understands this need because it also resonates with his upbringing. Except he has learned that in the absence of male energy, it's easier to use the emotion of females when they are not in good discernment, okay? So your discernment, your intuition is going to be very important. Ultimately, some of those men learn to pull on the strings of intimacy and fake emotion to relate. This has been called the twin flame dynamic because it feels so intense. And these are essentially codependent dynamics where the universe has drawn a human mirror to you so that you can understand your unhealed traumas that motivate your choices. Okay? Now, if our relationship with our dad is void of emotion, we have a skewed thought process of malevolent forces. Some people call this misogyny or toxic masculinity. Both women and men have it. And you will understand how they've internalized that through their fathers, because fathers should lead in accessing and understanding that source of energy. And they basically teach us how to use that energy to bring balance to ourselves rather than harm to our life. So what are malevolent forces? It's masculine domination. There is a divine and not so divine masculine force, just like there's polarity in everything else. And so that's what we'll be talking about today, and how that lower force of malevolence is present in nature, in the material realm, and it seeks to devour. That's ultimately what narcissism is about, ladies and gentlemen. It is a sign of the times. What kind of sign? Well, it's a sign of the degradation or our fall. Remember, I said that this was the winter part of the cycle of consciousness. And in that winter part of the cycle, we have what I like to call a light to darkness ratio, which means how much more light or positivity that your consciousness is able to hold versus how much darkness or negativity your consciousness is able to hold. So one of the aspects of the emotional plane is that if you don't process your emotional energy and it continues to build and build and build, then you tend to get blocks. You tend to get certain type of challenges, okay? And sometimes the universe will alert you to that block or that challenge so that you are able to fix it, okay? That degradation is happening all over this plane of existence because people are not processing their emotions. They're staying in the lower level of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where they're pretty much yearning for either safety and security or love and belongingness or both. So those are basic needs that should have been met during childhood, but because those emotions were not processed, there is a type of skewed reality, or it's very clouded, okay, that people live by, and they tend to repeat those patterns. So let me get into the meat of this so we can get a better understanding of how and why narc behavior seems to permeate the Black community, okay? Now, think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Safety and security are at the lowest tier. That is root chakra existence. So when you have a root chakra existence, you tend to feed on the higher realms or chakras like sacral, which has to do with emotion, the heart, which represents being whole in spirit, the throat chakra or the expression mechanism, also your discernment, which I mentioned earlier, and that has to do with the third eye, as well as the crown, which gives us confidence in knowing our reality. A person who is a narcissist wants to devour just mostly your physical and your emotional, so they try to throw you off in those higher chakras, okay? But the emotional part is just what makes us human. And they will devour your sex and attention, surely, and some of your money and earning potential if you tend to allow it, okay? Now, on a spiritual level, narc behavior really represents a reprobate mind. If we define that, it's an unprincipled person. And being without principles means that an individual doesn't care to act in alignment with what is moral and does not show recognition of what is right and wrong. okay? And they do not show restraint. Beloveds, there is an imbalance in love and light versus hate and darkness. Make no mistake about it. And if you fail to set boundaries as the balance, you will be giving your pearls to swine to be devoured. How does this happen? It happens through relationships, okay? First of all, relationships are important, okay? They add an extra layer of joy and fulfillment to our lives. They bring opportunities for growth and they build us up. They can't, however, fix whatever core wounds we bring with us to the relationships. Instead, we end up repeating dysfunctional relationship dynamics until we heal the root of the problem ourselves. So one of the things that is very big is that we have a lot of codependent dynamics in our communities. So if you are a codependent, you will tend to attract what is called a narcissist or somebody who has narcissistic behaviors because your boundaries are weak. And this sets up a dynamic. Codependent couples usually are out of balance, okay? They frequently have struggles for power and control. We tend to look at that as like a toxic relationship. And the imbalance of power that one partner may have taken on, as a responsibility over the other. And then what ends up happening is you give and you give and you give. So one person tends to be a giver, another person tends to be a taker, and then you admire something in that person that you don't have, so that becomes a competition or jealousy. Okay? Now, when you start to really know someone, because narcissists wear a mask to where you can't really know their true selves. But usually physical characteristics tend to disappear. So you're really left with the energy of that person. You start to realize when you're in a codependent relationship or a relationship with someone who has narcissistic behavior, it becomes really draining, okay? Really, really draining. And a narcissist hones in on a person to sell them to sell you their fake selves. And for a person who feels like they don't fit in, or they're looking for love and belongingness or a sense of acceptance, if they don't have good boundaries, the narcissist tends to take advantage, okay, of those aspects of that person so that they're able to serve themselves with whatever they need, okay? And that their grandiose feelings actually come from that over time. We're talking about in our Black communities, because we don't have a lot of money to be on a certain level where it comes to being narcissistic, okay? So being able to get those needs met from anybody with what they call game or manipulation, that's how a person with narcissistic tendencies act. And when boundaries are confused, the supply of whatever the codependent or giver will give to keep the attention of the narcissist, that becomes the focus of control in the relationship, okay? And that is based on a person's need to belong, okay? Now, another thing is a narcissist is the shadow of a highly sensitive person, okay? People who need to fit in, or people with some personality disorders, okay? Maybe they're bipolar, okay? Or borderline, okay? But the darkness of the twin flame is ultimately the ability to disassociate or to be empathic. And the narcissist depends on this because a narcissistic parasite seeks to exploit or leech off of you. If you can easily override what you feel to be something for someone else, you are an ideal supply. And they tend to feel grander because of you, the more they will latch on until someone can make them feel greater. Okay? And if someone can make them feel greater, that person then becomes your competition. It ultimately starts to be a race between two people to put another person on a pedestal. Usually this is called triangulation. And it's also a dynamic that we have to look at when it comes to helping versus enabling. Because if you're in an interdependent relationship, both people should be providing mutual support and aid. But in codependent relationships, only one person is offering help, and the help tends to create more dependency because you're enabling, rescuing, or doing things for someone that they should